Morning, everybody. My name is Neha Joseph. You have gathered here today for the exciting launch of SkEdu, a proud product of JPNME. SkEdu is an AI assisted platform meant for the holistic performance of students and teachers in the school community. Education is an integral part and factor in the upbringing of the younger generation, and we at JPNME have gone over it, tried distant methods which were accumulated from industry experts from decades of experience. Now, I would like to welcome our panel of experts, starting with Mr. Shashi P. Mithil, CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, Dr. Saji Gopinath, Vice Chancellor of Digital University Kerala, Ms. Prakriti Podar, Global Head Mental Health at Round Glass, Ms. Sridevi Devi Reddy, CEO of SR Innovations, Mr. Arjun Rao, General Partner of Speciali Invest, Mr. Vivek Vidyarthi, Educationist and L&D Professional, Mr. Yadindranath TJ. He is in charge of the IEEE Computer Society operations in India. Mr. Sudhir SR, Program Manager of the GAIN Accelerator. I'm happy to welcome you all at the webinar today, where we will go over what SkEdu is and how it will revolutionize the education industry. Last but not the least, I would like to welcome all our viewers who have joined with us in this virtual space. And now it's my honor to welcome the brain behind JPNME, CEO and co-founder, Mrs. Pinky Jayaprakash.
Hi all, myself Pinky Jayaprakash. We started our venture in 2018. So I've been in a teaching background for 4 years and a learner, active learner in artificial intelligence, and have a couple of papers in AI. And we just found that there is a space, there is actually a gap in education, especially in integrating technology. And we understood that there is a need of actually there is a big gap, and there is a kind of need which actually helps in the holistic growth of the student. So in that idea we started this venture. And in order to validate our idea, it took years of struggle, years of getting suggestions, getting feedbacks from so many mentors, advisors and all, in order to validate our idea and to start this actual product. So it's years of journey. So initially we started with a software, just launching a software company, or just starting a software company with employees as actually my students were there as the employees initially. And actually I'm just finding my founders or my partners to uh, make this idea really happen. And after lots of struggle and all, we are so proud to just present our idea in front of all of you. And that is SkEdu. So before having this launch of SkEdu, I will just love to share to all of you a small journey, our company journey video. Let's see that a small bit of video here. Even it's no, yeah, yeah. Yeah, actually this video can't see all the struggles we have in this last 2 years. So this is only a few of the pictures integrated to create a video, but the journey was too tough. And we are very proud to say that we are a big team. We started from 2 and we are now 15, including the very expert psychologist associate actually from Nimhans, and the best AI experts, having doctorate in AI experts, and all the business development people, including IIMs and all from all the streams. We are a big team now, even though we are in 15, but we are growing big, we are dreaming big, and the outcome is SkEdu. So just I'm introducing SkEdu, a complete assessment platform, a complete comprehensive assessment platform for students and teachers in the school community. And our aim is to just improve the performance of the students and thereby focusing on the holistic growth of the students in the school community. So the holistic growth, we can say in all perspectives, including the psychological aspects of the students, academic, non-academic. So we are actually focusing on all this area and create the Excel, making Excel of all the skills and actually recreating their future. So here I am very proud to launch our SkEdu, our complete assessment platform for students, which is actually going to revolutionize the education system. So let's launch. We are launching our product video here. So here we are officially launching our product SkEdu in front of all of our well-wishers, our audience, and here we can see how the education system is changing through our platform. Thank you all.
Thank you, Pinky, for sharing with us your story and your insights about JPNME. And the products look amazing. I feel that AI is influencing the future, and I believe it will continue as a technology innovator for our foreseeable future. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Saji Gobinath to share his insights about JPNME.
Good morning. The founder of JPNME, Ms. Pinky Jayaprakash, other dignitaries and invited guests and parents, students, and others. Personally, for me, it is a very happy moment. I've seen JPNME, Pinky Jayaprakash, for last 2-3 years. I was heading the Kerala Startup Mission, and I've seen the growth of this company and the passion in which she was leading to make a very important change. The mission sealed to make an important change in the field of education. I think most of us know that there is a paradox in education. At one end, we know that great products have been come from education institutions, colleges, universities, etc. But the adoption of technology in education per se is actually not very high. We know that even today, most of the schools, most of the education system still follow a mass-based education system, even though the technology has advanced far ahead of us. Because of these reasons, many times the students have to adopt learning systems outside the school system. Could be a gates, could be education magazines, could be some of the education packages and things like that. But of late, especially this COVID has actually brought in a big disruption in this whole thing. And we have seen that how technology can actually bridge the gaps, how technology can actually increase the access, and how technology can actually make the education very personalized. And that basically requires a large number of products which actually map the student learning paths, to provide the teachers the power to go through the data, identify the path, learning path of each of the students, and maybe recreate what I used to call the precision education which our Gurukulas were offering at some point of time. And I'm sure that a SkEdu platform, which is launched today, is a right step in that direction. And through a set of psychometric analysis and to look at students' learning path, it empowers the teachers to provide very precision education within a mass scale inside the classrooms. And that is something which actually makes the best of both worlds. The schools provides more than the education provides, builds a character of a student. And but at the same time, once a teacher understands how a student's learning path is, he or she will be able to help and empower the student to achieve his or her goals. I wish SkEdu be a very important player in this whole journey of transforming our schools and education, especially in the context when new education policy speaks about individual excellence, looking at India to be second to none in the next 20 to 30 years in the world, and make Indian education system one of the best in the world. And I'm sure that this platform will contribute to that. Wish all the very best to Pinky, Jay Prakash and the team, as well as for the product. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. And now I would like to welcome Mr. Sudhir from the Gain Accelerator to share his thoughts about the company.
Thank you. In fact, just to give you a background of the Gain, because many would not be knowing about what exactly the Gain is all about. So Gain is a Section 8 not-for-profit accelerator, so wherein we majorly focus on providing all the required supports to startups, right from which are paid POC and above stage, in terms of mentor connects, investor connects, and even the global market access. So that's one another USP of ours. So JPNME is a very promising edtech startup, which is in our cohort with key differentiations, as the focus of the product is offering on the analysis of psychological, mental behavior, academic and non-academic aspects of a child. So in Kannada, there is a proverb called Gidavagi Baggaddu Maravagi Baggite, which means that whatever you cannot shape it in the early stages of the plant, you cannot really do it when it becomes a tree, right? So I think with regards to that, and moreover, whatever the new reforms that have come in terms of national education policy, I think the focus is going to be more on the skills-based education than the theoretical or whichever was prevailing currently now, right? And I'm sure JPNME will have a long way to go in this particular journey, and we really vouch for their products. The reason being, that would have undergone a very rigorous research even before they came out with this kind of a product actually, and even the kind of experts that they have onboarded, because many of these things are really subjective, so you cannot measure that so easily, and creating metrics for each of those parameters is something really amazing. I wish Pinky great success in this journey, and whatever the way we would they want our support, we are all there for that. And wishing you all success, Pinky, for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And now I would like to welcome Mr. Shashi P. Mittal to share his thoughts about NEP 2020 and the importance of holistic growth in students.
Very good morning to all of you. During the last several decades, there has been so much of changes in the way we live, the way we work, the way we travel, and so on. But unfortunately, a proportionate change in the education sector has not been seen. In fact, the focus of the education has been on memorization, I would say, mainly on the exam front. If you take any of the examinations, the focus has been more than the critical thinking, or testing the critical thinking, or the real life applications of what has been learned. It was more on the memorization. And the education is something like entering into a tunnel. Like we enter into a tunnel, possibly it could be an arts tunnel, a science tunnel, an economics tunnel. and may not be because of your liking, possibly because your parents wanted you to be in that tunnel. And then there is no escape from one, and you can only escape at the end of the tunnel. There may be light, there may not be light at the end of the tunnel, but there is no way in which you can shift from this tunnel. That is the current situation. And recently, there has been a lot of changes in the educational scenario, mainly because of the technology. A lot of technologies has entered into. Technology has entered into all life, all way of life, and technology has entered into the learning or teaching process also. Like for example, the MOOC, the massive online open courses that you see. I would say that this has kind of democratized the education. I won't say education, but training process as such, like the training programs or the lessons which were only available to a very few people. The high end of technology, the high end of learnings, etc., coming from the highest level of institutions like the Stanfords and MITs, etc., are available, accessible to the common man, common people, and at affordable or either free or at a very affordable cost. So this has made the educational system or the training system into a kind of a personalized option. Like we have the personalized medicine, we are targeting for the personalized medicine, where the medicine is, the medical treatment, it has to be personalized for each individual, depending upon his genetic thing or his history, etc. And or rather, these kind of the citizen-centric governance, which we have been targeting for years during the e-governance period and the m-governance or whatever you call. So the education system, or there is a huge possibility now that the education system becomes a personalized learning option. And of course, there has been a lot of technology infrastructure, the introduction of technology infrastructure also. Like, for example, if you take the Kerala case, there has been a specific institution which has been created for exclusively for creating the IT infrastructure and the educational institutions, which is called the TIDE, which recently, 2 days back, it was in the news saying that it has received the award from the, it has been recognized by the Niti Aayog as one of the best organizations, which has been giving a lot of importance to the technology infrastructure in the education. Or, for example, the CAFON, Kerala Fiber Optic Network. We have fiber optic network in everywhere also. Specifically the Kerala Fiber Optic Network, even though it is not the end objective is not specifically the education sector. This is also supposed to give a lot of impetus to the education sector. And as Dr. Saji rightly said, the COVID-19 has become an accelerator for changes in the education sector, because possibly 6 months back or 8 months back, we didn't expect that a lower primary teacher will resort to the online mechanisms for teaching, or a class 1 student will resort to the online mode for receiving the education. We didn't think, and COVID-19 made it possible to think in that direction. And coming to the national education policy, there has been a strategic shift planned in the education sector by the introduction of the national education policy. Like earlier, we had as I said, there has been a compartmentalization of the streams, which is now being taken away, which gives the flexibility for the student, for the learner, to select the learning streams from whatever possible options. Like midway, if he feels that, yes, I was in the science stream, but this is not suitable for me, I feel that it's something else, possibly arts or economics, is more suitable to me, I have an option to change to that stream. And then the focus is more on learning, more on the student than on the teaching and on the teacher per se. And of course, there has been a lot of emphasis on the creativity, critical thinking, a lot of emphasis on the technology. Even though technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning has been specifically said, I would have loved to be a technology agnostic kind of a thing. But even then, we expect that AI and ML will be there for quite some time, and which just like in any other areas also, these are also going to make a lot of impact on the the education sector. And the NAP also puts a lot of focus on the data, which whatever is the technology that you use, data will be the core resource of all these technologies. So with this, I would stop here, and I would like to wish the Pinky, Jayaprakash, and team a whole lot of success, not limited to the Kerala or India sector, but the world as a canvas for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts. And now we can move on to the next session. Our panel members will be discussing about NEP 2020, integrating technology and ensuring holistic development of students in school education, the pros and cons of the new education system, and how this will influence a student's overall growth. Sir, now Mr. Yatindranath will take over the panel discussion from here.
Hi, thank you. Good morning to one and all. Yeah, this is a very interesting product that we have here and launching. Pinky and team, congratulations and all the very best. So now we have a very powerful panel. So Pinky, would you introduce the panel briefly?
Neha, could you please give a brief of our panelists?
Okay, Pinky. So first we have Shashi P. Mittal. He's the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission. And we have Mr. Dr. Saji Gopinath, Vice Chancellor of Digital University of Kerala. Ms. Prakriti Porar, Global Head Mental Health at Roundglass. Ms. Sridevi Devi Reddy, CEO of SR Innovations. Mr. Arjun Rao, General Partner of Specially Invest. Mr. Vivek Vidyarthi, Educationist and L&D professional. Mr. Yadindranath TJ, he's in charge of the IEEE Computer Society operations in India. And Mr. Sudhir SR, he's the program manager of the GAIN Accelerator. So these are our panel members, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So may I request, Sridevi Devi Reddy. So we had a brief discussion, and different panelists have agreed to take on different roles of a parent, of a teacher, of a technologist, and a holistic growth and debate. So may I request, Sridevi Devi Reddy to bring out, what are the expectations of a parent in a new education system, and what are the challenges they face, and then what solutions are they seeking?
Thank you, sir. I would like to introduce myself, add an introduction to myself. I have worked all my life in education or edtech organizations, so I understand SkEdu better. And another introduction of mine is I'm a mother of a 24-year-old. So I have seen her go through the education cycle, starting from pre-primary till post-graduation. She just finished a post-graduation a year ago. So I've gone through the whole. I'm really glad that our national education policy is focusing on holistic growth of the student, which hitherto was not the norm. And as one of our esteemed speaker earlier pointed out, we were totally focusing on that mugging up culture, by hearting something, or the why, what was not encouraged in a classroom. So the inquisitiveness quotient of the students was suppressed. The innovation quotient obviously will not increase if you suppress the inquisitiveness quotient. And coming back, one more good thing about NEP, which I have observed, is having a single stream of subject. Earlier, it used to be, if I'm interested in biology, in spite of not being interested in physics and chemistry during higher secondary and above, I had to tolerate physics and chemistry along with biology, which actually curbs the growth of the child, and his time is divided between 3 subjects, especially 2 disinterested subjects. NAP per se, I think, is a very good step in that direction, having a single system. The students will have more time to understand, learn, do a deep dive into the subject. More importantly, they'll be motivated to study. You just don't need to push them. This is my take on things. And I personally believe that this will create a lot of, this will be enhancer for holistic growth of the student, because his time is getting channelized in the right way. As a parent, I'm telling this, but as a board member of SR University and being part of so many other educational institutions in some form or the other, um, uh, I also, from their perspective also, I feel that the right to choose a single stream during higher secondary education will be very useful for the growth of our, the kind of manpower that will come out after 5 years, the kind of innovation quotient you can expect from students who have learned a single stream is going to be amazing. So as a parent, as an educationist, both the ways, I feel NAP has done a great job in this single stream thing. So open for discussion after all of you speak with the other audience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sridevi. Yeah, that is true. That, earlier when we all studied, we had one single stream, and you call it as focus or whatever, but the other components were missed out. It could be music, it could be games or other things, but yeah, NEP is coming in handy. Now, may I request, Vivek Vidyarthi to talk a little more deeper about the NEP 2020, what changes it is bringing, and what challenges it has.
Thank you, Yatindra, and thanks everyone for having me on this panel. And good start by you, Sridevi, good introduction, good setting of the platform. And as we know, I mean, any new policy in terms of be it education or any other sector has pros and cons, and only time will tell what works well and what doesn't out of the entire new system that has been brought in. I would definitely vouch for one thing, that there's a lot more openness in terms of what people want to choose, in terms of on what they want to learn, and a big jump or a change. In fact, it's an absolute radical change from the way the education system has been. So, not to say that what was there was bad and what has come up is good, or what was there was really great and what has come up is not great, because we have seen tremendous success with our education system, with world over companies and organizations, lapping up Indian students better than any other country in the world. So it has worked well for us, but that doesn't mean that something can't be better and different. So that's what MEP brings to us. I noticed one very key aspect in MEP, and that is, even when you come to class 10th or 12th, and even if you're not in, say, a science stream, but you're suddenly interested in getting into science and picking up subjects like Sridevi mentioned, you are open to do that. And I'd like to bring out a very, very critical point in my view over here. And I've been a very big fan of this way of looking at learning, and that is driving learning towards being assessment based. And what MEP would definitely prompt, and it's a good opportunity for organizations like SkEdu to capitalize on this. The learning should go assessment based now. When we're talking about so much of openness in the way learning is happening, so a student who's in class 7th or 8th and wants to suddenly say, no, I want to learn biology. How do we know whether the student is ready for biology? How do we know the student is ready for changing tracks and gears from one stream to the other? And that brings in the concept of what we call diagnostic assessments. That's the very first basic stage of assessment, to understand where the student is at the current stage to be able to take up a particular subject. So while assessments have been typically taken as a benchmark of how a student is understood and performed, and of course, I'm sure assessment companies have had their own strategy in terms of building different kinds of assessment using various underlying theories and principles which have been applied to assessments. I think a shift will have to be made at every stage of the learning grouping that has been done. For example, You have age groups from 3 to 5, 5 to 8, 8 to 11, so on and so forth. Based on what type of learning works well over there, we would need to definitely infuse diagnostic assessments. We are going short on, or we are cutting down on the summative assessments. So as you all know, that we're going to have final exams only on class 3, 5, 8, and then the board exams. So what about the other classes? So summative assessments are going down. So that brings in another point in terms of making sure that we have more of formative assessments, right? And interim checks or interim assessments. So diagnostic and interim assessments are going to play a huge role in this new system of education if it has to succeed. So let me pause at that, get some of the thoughts, and maybe then I can continue and share more insights into how assessment-based learning and the leveraging of the various principles of assessing progress. And this is true of not just schools, it will be colleges, and in fact, even in corporates, we try to make sure that our learning or our uh, progress of employees, professionals is made assessment-based.
Okay, thank you, Vivek, for bringing in the points of learning in multiple streams, and learning should be assessment based. So you assess a student for the trends before you actually ask the student to go ahead and learn. And grouping, age-wise diagnosis, and continuous assessments are the key highlights. True, very true. These are very much required. I'm sure they will also help. Now, may I ask Arjun Rao, a technology specialist, to see how the technology can help get some of these problems addressed. Arjun, over to you.
Sir. And once again, thanks for having me, Pinky and team, right? Congratulations on the launch. Like most of the panel here, I don't necessarily come from the education industry and don't have that depth. But what we do see running an early stage venture capital firm is a lot of early stage startups focusing on the education industry. It is one of the fastest growing industries in terms of digital education and innovation in this sector. And therefore, we do see a lot of ideas in and around this space. And that vantage point is what I will try and bring some flavor from. We all have heard and seen the massive successes of companies such as Byju's, Vedantu, and some others in terms of content creation, mainly. And we, I think Sachi sir already pointed out about the MOOCs that have come through over the last few years. So there is digital content creation, which is taking the classroom from the physical environment to the digital, that is already happening, right? But what is sorely lacking or clearly lacking is the ability when the student to teacher ratio becomes much higher, right? In terms of going from a physical setting to a digital setting, how does one personalize the content to specific students in specific scenarios, right? To be able to do that, I think data, AI, data capture is very important right at the beginning, right? And having workflows and work streams that enable data capture in seamless fashion, right? To learn about every student's interaction with every type of content and with every teacher leads you to understand their behavior patterns, their learning patterns, and that can lead to a feedback loop, which can be tuned to say what content should be delivered to the particular student in the next stage, right? So this adaptive personalized learning system is what needs to be built. So data is at the core of all of this, right? And once you have data at various levels, I think AI and machine learning and intelligence can be brought in for specific personalization, right? We are seeing some very interesting applications that are coming out in terms of AI for very young students, and then students who are going into middle school and later, to understand their engagement with every type of content. That is the second step. Once you start saying, okay, let us target or let us have students go through a certain type of curriculum or certain type of content, right? One has to keep measuring continuously. Are they engaged when they are learning, right? Are they receptive to to the understanding, right? In the physical setting, it is a lot easier. A teacher can relatively pay a little more attention to saying who is learning and who is not learning. But in a digital setup remotely, which has become almost the norm or is going to become the norm more and more, right? It is very difficult for an individual teacher without signals to identify whether the content being delivered is being well received by the student. So ability to understand how engaged the student is on units of content being consumed and broadly overall thematic content being consumed is very crucial. And I think systems being built towards that, which I think part of it is being has been spoken about in terms of continuous assessment is part of it. But engagement by maybe, let's say, a video training or a video class is being put out, right? How do students react to this itself is a problem statement, right? Your environment has completely changed. You are not in a classroom environment. You're sitting at home. Maybe you have other distractions, right? This is not a very easy time for this transition, both for the teachers as well as for the students, I believe, right? So digitally understanding engagement is becoming critical, right? There's a lot of innovation has come in the world in terms of in e-commerce engagement, in gaming engagement, in other verticals. This has to be brought to education, I believe, and some of those same technologies in terms of measuring unit engagement is very crucial. Final part I will talk about is the feedback loop, which I mentioned. One has to keep measuring, right? Any progress being made on this front, any innovation use being deployed to see finally what is the end output. That in this case, it is a long-term view to say one student get different courses and different curriculums that they are getting exposed to. The final outcome of what goals they are reaching, what future education they're going towards, and finally what career paths they're using has to come back into the main system to finally guide the younger students into saying, are they taking the right path, right? So technology in terms of data pipelines and workflows, and finally AI and intelligence as layers to guide students' career paths is very crucial in my opinion. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Arjun, for bringing in the technology to help the cause of the learning, the continuous learning, the adaptive learning, and how can AI and ML be used specifically for each student, because each student is different. That's an important point. Thank you for bringing that out. Now we have Dr. Sasi Gopinath, who is a vice chancellor and who was also formerly heading the startup cell of Kerala government. So may I request the Professor Sasi Gopinath to bring in whatever the challenges he sees from an institution side. When you have to, all of this is good, all of this needs to be done, but there are challenges when you have to institutionalize these. So may I request, Professor Sasi Gopinath to throw some lights on the challenges and what solutions he would expect.
Thank you, Mr. Adindranath. I think we have a exciting discussion so far with regard to NEP, and I think all of us agree that this is something which is going to make a revolutionary change in the way the education is going to happen in the country. But we know that, like you rightly point out, the success is when the rubber meets the road. What is there in the paper, when it translates into action, is basically where the real essence of it happens. We are all used to that model of having a classes, then do an end-term assessment, maybe a little bit of a formative assessment, but at the end there is a summative assessment which basically put people into different categories. We are used to the model where, like Sri Shashi sir has rightly pointed out, we used to look at students based on the subjects. Like you may have a physics, you have a chemistry, you have a biology, like that. You are subject-wise. So the holistic education of the student is many times actually goes in this process. So you are missing the woods for the trees sort of a thing is happening. So that is actually the challenge, how the institutional transformation has to happen along with this. that has to happen in a multiple levels. It cannot. It's not a. It is not just one part. If you just change the assessment or if you just change the pedagogy, it will change. No, it has to come as a holistic path as such. And I think that is a challenge which we are going to face in the next few years, especially. But so far, many times we were referring to the regulatory framework as something which actually stops this, especially the proactive teachers used to. We would like to do this, but there is a policy which government does not allow that. Now the policy framework is there. Now translating this policy framework to look at each of the student and implementing it is going to be the next chance as such. So for this, I think we may have to start recognizing a few aspects that India being a country with such a large amount of disparity, there is going to be a very, very fundamental questions to be asked at how we implemented people with a lot of resources, people with very little amount of resources, parents who are extremely educated, people who could guide the students, and where there's a large number of parents who may not be like that. But can we come out with something which arrives into all of this is the question I think the teaching community and the education experts have to start thinking about. And there are ways to do that, because something which to a large extent we were doing so far is that we were keeping the student as not an active participant in the learning process. It was the parents, it's the teachers who are actually the active, and the students many times is in a passive learning phase sort of a thing. And I'm telling you this from the data which Pradham has brought in. You can actually look at how the Pradham surveys actually brought in this. So the transfer is that you need to actually start looking at the student as a very key learner or a key participant in this whole learning process. That's basically where the technology is going to play a very important role. And that is basically where the teachers may have to reinvent the education. If you look at NEP, one of the lines of NEP says that the objective of NEP is to reinvent the teachers to be the most respected thing. So at some point of time, it was like that in India. Teachers were the most respected people in the Indian context. We need to reinvent that. And that is basically where the teachers may have to come up and start learning how do you analyze the data, how do you empower the students to learn. I'm not saying that it's not happening, it's happening at different levels, but collectively we may have to start looking at it. And next 2-3 years is going to be very challenging in this context, but I believe that we have a new set of entrepreneurs who are coming out with supporting systems, edutech solutions, people like Arjun Rao who are willing to support them financially so that such good products come into the market. So you actually are creating a very nice ecosystem into the education system. And if all of us work together, I believe we can actually make a very transformative change. And that is really required. There is no choice to this. And I just put one point and stop here. Many of us may not be aware of this, that in the digital economy world, unfortunately, there is a huge economic disparity. Two countries in the world, America and China, actually control 80% of the digital economy. The others are actually deprived of it. And primarily that is because we really wanted to make a huge leap to bridge that gap. And that is very important even to make our country be a leader in that. And that is basically where the NEP foundation comes. So collectively when we discuss and make learning as an enjoyable process, use the ecosystem, use the companies and edutech companies and others who are providing the product, integrate with it. At the end, teaching and the teacher is a key thing, and empowering that using the technology, I think you will be able to make a change into the system. And that I think is a path forward which we need to tread and we need to discover. Thank you.
Absolutely agree on the holistic approach which is needed, no doubt about it. And I think we all went into a little bit of components because those are things which will sum up to the entire approach, and it's not easy to be transitioning in the new system. There is multiple factors to be considered, in my opinion. For example, starting with even language that's to be used as a medium of instruction, right across from the lower grades till grade 8 and then grade 8 onwards. So the concept of moving away from the yearly annual assessment. So I think yes, agree, Dr. Saab, that it has to be a holistic approach, and technology will play a massive role here. How we flip the classroom to make sure that the students get engaged is going to be very critical. And that's to Arjun's point. I think content and how you deliver. So flipping the classroom is going to be very, very important.
Yep. Yeah.
Technology is now becoming affordable also. That's the positive aspect of it.
Right. Right. Thank you, Professor Taji Gopinath. So yeah, you have made very important points that the earlier whatever inhibitions we had from the regulatory perspective is now removed. So now that excuse no more exists. So now it is for the parents and the schools to reinvent the next path, find out what is and allow the student to pursue his career and life, in what that student is good at. Very good points. And one another important aspect is the mental health. And when something happens and when something doesn't happen, what happens to the student and what the student thinks and what trauma or the mental disturbance a student goes through is also very important. And may I request Prakriti, who has done significant work in this domain, to throw some light on these aspects and what are the challenges and what solutions are expected. Prakriti.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me on this panel. I'm just wondering how to allow my camera. Yes. Thank you for having me. It's been such a wonderful discussion, and I have to say that, I am a mother of 3 children myself, and there's been a massive transition for them. But apart from that, in my work, especially with my foundation, we work with marginalized populations as well, and we work on mental health, through all the aspects, whether it be with parents, whether it be with students, whether it be with teachers. And I have to say, 2020 has really been a suspension of all our so-called human rights, our fundamental rights as well. And in the massive polarization that took place, the students that we train and we work with, especially in Maharashtra, in Chandigarh, they couldn't come online because they don't have access, of course. And we're talking about now creating that access, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that, people may not have the infrastructure within their own lives to be able to own that. And I hope that doesn't extend the gap even more. And I think that's something that I dream about, like, how do we actually fix this problem? So it's not like, mental health for me is a passion. When I'm thinking about these things, it really is not from the point of view of just, a technical aspect, but it's really from the emotional aspect, the social emotional aspect that happens with classrooms and people being together is something that I need to see how that would work in a situation where we are taking it primarily online. The reason I introduced the fact that I had 3 kids and I have 3 kids is that it was so difficult, and it is difficult for them to be homeschooled. I mean, the fact is that there is a school and they're online, but you have to monitor because kids are really smart. I mean, they are going to go for things that are easy for them or fun for them. So you've got a classroom going on and you've got gaming happening on the side, and it was so difficult I have parents that called me up and said, how do I do this? And of course, one of the formulas is maintain a strict schedule, etc. But that is, again, taking into account that we believe that, there's a parent at home and able to monitor the child. But that is not the case everywhere. So we have to really think about, what is it that we're talking about and how are we really going to transform this? And I love some of the comments being spoken, because I built curriculum as well, and built the peace program, for example, at the university in Pune, MIT, which is now World Peace University, based on the World Peace content that I was part of building. And I think this hybrid model has to be considered. I think a hybrid model is the only way to go forward, where you do have them coming together, children, students, etc., coming together. And I love that the SK education is really bringing about assessment-based learning outcomes as well, so that children are mapped even to their peers and even to their teachers. And I think it's important to understand. And I'm in Canada now, so I was in India before this the lockdown took place, and I know that my children would have just been so happy with this online learning, and the only way to get them to some kind of of routine was, come back out because we are Canadian. And I said, okay, let's bring the children out and work with them. And they're going to a regular school, but they've changed the way in which school is conducted, which I thought was fantastic, where they made smaller cohorts and people actually, didn't. So they only go to school for like a couple of hours, and they're using that hybrid program. So they go to school and they come back and they work online. And I think that's really important, because when they're working online, it's all based on what they need to deliver. So the thinking has to happen independently, the ideating. So it creates that we want, with creativity, innovation, and just being able to work in groups as well to ideate. These kind of things are really important. But for me, having a system that can be online would really help in preventive mental health care and as well as protective. And putting that into the system and making it a part of the learning outcomes as well, like teaching your child to be happy, teaching your child to learn how to be happy through the, and happy is a broad term, but I'm using it just as a way of mentioning that mental health preventive and protective practices are so important, but that includes the community that comes with it. So of course we all know that on multiple levels, holistic well-being is really your mindset. It's got to do with your physical fitness, your nutritional fitness, and all these things go together. So I don't want to lose out on those things as we're just focused on transforming education to an online system. And that's one of the key challenges that I wonder about. At this point, our foundation has started to work with the communities, but they had to go in. They couldn't do it remote because our students don't have any remote access. And I know that this is only a learning curve, and I know that eventually things will be easier in a way. And we're cultivating a culture at this point of creating mental health resilience through the education system. And I think that's a very big challenge, and it's a good challenge to take. And I'm happy that we're trying to do this. So thank you for even thinking about mental health in this space, because it's always been sort of so ostracized and people don't really think about it. And I know that when I work with schools which were open just before the lockdown, I think even in February, and I would teach people how to take care of children who are on the spectrum, or how to take care of children and who may have some behavioral or emotional challenges. And the teachers would say, and I'm talking about schools that are, like I said, public schools, and the teachers would say, no, we don't have time to shift the way in which we teach. We have a curriculum, we have to deliver that curriculum. Please talk to the CWS worker. And it was so difficult to do that, because every single person in the system has to be a benefactor in the child's mental health and the child's educational platform. And I think that is when we're going to create this healthy society for ourselves. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Prakriti, for bringing in the emotional aspects. Yeah, true, and everyone agrees that a student should enjoy the learning, be happy learning whatever he or she learns, and holistic well-being, not just the mental health, but also the physical health needs to be taken care of, and that needs to be integrated into the learning. Thank you for bringing that. So we have few questions from the viewers. So maybe this one is for Professor Saji Gopinath. Syllabus. Who decides the syllabus? Is it going to be the old method where there will be a panel who decides, or will it include people from different sectors of the society, which includes parents and alumni, students, and Professor Saji?
This to me.
Yeah, if you can throw light. See, people have been throwing questions on the chat. I mean, I have also seen you answering as well. So one of the questions is syllabus. Who decides on the syllabus? So can you please answer?
Two things. When you look at the curriculum, we were always focusing on output rather than outcomes. There is a model, at least in the higher education, this is already being practiced, that we are basically looking at outcome-based education, or you are looking at the syllabus, the content primarily based upon what are the outcomes we are expecting out of a student in a particular learning phase. So once you have that as the framework, then then the fixing of that is not a big challenge. Is what I believe. You have education experts, you have education agencies like NCRP and many other agencies which are already actively working on that. But one of the things, especially when you go into, and you know that the new division actually very clearly identify the way each of the section is going to create it. You have the foundation skills, you have the critical thinking skills at the later stage and things like that. So each of those things, there is going to be a flexibility within a context of a particular school or a state or a region. But within that, with that particular flexibility, you will have a larger framework. A larger framework which we put, but there will be flexibility at the school level or at a regional level to look at what is required on that. But one important thing which the policy brings in is you need to ensure that the interdisciplinary learning happens at a higher level, critical thinking happens at a higher level, and like Mr. Vivek has rightly pointed out, there is to be a substantive change in the way the assessment is going to be done, because if you still go back to the typical assessment models, even if a grade syllabus or a curriculum, it can fail. So those aspects are to be done, but there are international models which are available, which have been practiced. Some of them we believe that will get adopted.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I hope it also takes care of the continuous feedback, so that it improves over time. So the next question is on the change in assessment methods. So will it be? I mean, someone has also already discussed this, mentioned this earlier. So should the assessment so far has been just the memory test, and whatever you have learned in the whole year or in a semester scheme in 6 months, you will have to you will have a memory test of three hours or so. So should that change? If yes, what should be the assessment methods? People have talked about the continuous assessment. True, but what?
I think, I mean, everyone is still free to. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's open for opinions from all, and the summative assessments definitely are going out of the system, given the way the policy is currently outlined. And when I say summative, I'm talking about year-end assessments year over year. So I'm going back to what I initially mentioned. I think the beginning of the assessments has to be, like I said, diagnostic. So the change would be to see if, for example, a student in class 3 or class 4 is starting to learn a new topic or a new subject. So their entire class gets subject to a certain set of parameters which tell the teacher as to where do these students stand in terms of their basic understanding of the topic. Say, for example, if it's going to be science. Now, students who reach class 4 or 5, they do know what science is. Now, what level of understanding are they at to start coaching them at class 4 or in class 5 is what will be the first level of assessment that I think needs to be implemented. And that sets the tone for how the class or the subsequent, and that Dr. Shaji also mentioned, how we tune it and how we tune both, and Arjun also mentioned, the content to make sure that the class is taken to that level of learning based on where they stand. And then, I mean, periodicity could be decided based on progress. So, it could be your interim assessments or your ongoing assessments could be done, once a month, once in a quarter, once in 3 months, but they should be positioned properly. And that is important. Otherwise, the entire essence of moving away from an exam system is lost. The exam systems have been putting a lot of psychological pressure, and Prakriti talked about it as well. So we are saying we're not talking about exams at the end of every class. Now that could act as a negative aspect also, given the fact that people feel, okay, there's no exam, I'm anyway going to go through to the next class. So we don't know how it's going to be panning out over there. So the formative and the interim assessments will play a great role over there for making sure that the teacher is able to assess how the student is progressing, where are they going, how are they, and what future corrections need to be made. So both the learner and the teacher, the involvement and responsibility level is going to go up. Obviously, it's going to be absolutely learner-centric because we're letting things on the learner, but then the teacher will have a huge role to play in terms of saying that, okay, these students are at a certain level and need to move from here, which is happening now. But it is going to become more with data, seeing that, okay, each student has performed in a certain way in terms of, where they have leveraged the knowledge that has been transferred to them. So data is going to be backing it up. Today, when we go to schools and we talk about progress of students, it's based on the quarterly exam or the half yearly exam or the final exam. And then we say that, and observations. So now we will have these interim benchmarkers and parents to make sure the guidance is proper. Open for anyone else's.
I would love to add one point. I think just adding to what Vivek just mentioned, right? And I think this is a place where technology can play a very crucial role, given that digital interactions and digital education is sort of becoming the norm, which means it's almost a continuous assessment all the time, right? Is possible, right? Every day that the student interacts digitally with teacher, with content, with classmates, right? And their learning, right? They are giving signals of progress or and pace of progress, right? And that data capture on a continuous basis, which means that the tools and the platforms that enable this learning have to be able to capture this data on a continuous basis. You can see every day how the student learns. Does the student ask a particular question? Does the student, let's say, click on a particular part of a curriculum, right? It could be an image, it could be a video, it could be an audio file, right? It could be text reading, it could be a small questionnaire taken, right? The group study that happens, right, between students to do particular projects, right? I think because a lot of this is moving digital, right, you can really measure and capture continuously, I would say as diligently as on a daily basis to see progress, right? Of course, certain aspects will still be offline, and they should, right? Because that is holistic. And therefore, monthly, quarterly sort of touch points are important. But, because so much is happening digitally, one can really measure and track every individual student's engagement levels and therefore learning levels on an ongoing basis. And I believe that's a massive opportunity for education startups to be able to capture this and then translate this into, what are the results in some sense.
Yeah, thanks, Arjun, for that. So there are a couple of other questions that users have posted. So one of them is, so we need to have a digital discipline versus a school discipline. So what do you suggest to have a digital discipline? Students are in home, not. And the second question is, not everyone can afford a digital learning method at the moment. So what are the solutions?
Afans, I think digital discipline is something that we are already grappling with in our homes, right? Because the school has kind of moved online, and therefore students are always in front of the screen. Sometimes it is not easy for the teacher or the parent to be able to measure whether it is learning or it is downtime or it is entertainment, right? Your interface with the digital world for your kid, are you allocating the right time for the right part of growth, right? So again, I think measuring some of these, tracking, therefore having a healthy mix, which both has to come from the school teachers and from parents to be able to have that conversation with students and with their wards and with their with children, to be able to tell them that school time is to focus, digital school time is to focus on the content and for interactions with your classmates and the teachers. And then there is specific time set aside for digital entertainment, gaming, and other things that students always do, kids always do, but also have that good mix, like I think Prakriti mentioned, in terms of mental wellness, go out and do other things, right? Or to have physical interactions and others. I think measuring and tracking and using it effectively for the right modules, right? I think there are already tools that are being provided by various content platforms in terms of parents being able to track what students are doing digitally, right? And if you're able to monitor to some degree and use some controls and systems to be able to have healthy hours of school education and then healthy hours of digital non-school time, right? I think that's how this can be balanced out. It's not going to be an easy transition. We are already seeing that, but I think it needs collaborative and cohesive effort from all. Part.
No, that's it. So the digital discipline versus the access to the digital content is a challenge. So I don't know who can address that. Maybe maybe Vivek. Vivek can address, how do we get the funding? Who will fund these initiatives? Because funding would be required in everything. We also need to train the teachers to this new method of teaching, and the students need to be enabled. Their houses need to be equipped, because not everyone may have the same etiquette at home. So how do we enable that? And all these are the challenges.
I think before we talk about funding, which I think has to be a joint effort, just adding on a couple of points to Arjun, this is where the pedagogy of training or teaching will come in. It has to be, and the digital discipline is a challenge not only in schools. I think it's a bigger challenge in corporates, be it meetings or be it sessions. People are
very true, very true,
not fully engaged, right? And a collaborative. So out of the 5, pedagogical aspects which are brought into learning, the collaborative part has to be increased tremendously, which is where people would find themselves more involved and tend to step away from stuff like, putting the cameras off, multitasking, which is what most of the corporates do, and kids also, they get distracted. So the more you are involved in the learning process, so a huge effort needed from teachers to also make the learning collaborative and interactive through case studies, and like I said earlier on, flipping the classroom, discussion-based learning. So various learning methodologies have to be deployed to make it successful. The infrastructure definitely needs massive scaling, and on part of the government, I think we've had a lot of provisions for educational loans, and right through several years. I remember even when my sister went to the US about 20 or 30 years back to start her studies, we availed educational loans. So a great deal of flexibility needs to be brought in by the government to in these kind of loans, where they should be able to where people who are not various levels of economic strata in the society can go in and equip their home with infrastructure. But that's just one part of it, getting a laptop and a connection. Today we have with almost 100% of the corporate world working from home, we have massive challenges in terms of internet, in terms of power, in terms of continued connectivity. So I think these are things which the government has to definitely take a huge step to try and address. Very little can be done on part of us individuals. And obviously educating parents on getting the right kind of infrastructure is something which also the schools have to do. What kind of laptops, what kind of computers, and what kind of connections. So that part of the technology education has to be done with a lot of parents.
Okay, thank you.
I think that is an area where the startups and technology companies also have to play an important role, because it is important that in a country with even if after government invest and you have BharatNet coming, you still will have challenges of bandwidth and things like that. So you need to come out with technology solutions which will work at low bandwidth. How do you actually create immersive learning without consuming of much larger amount of resources? So that is something which that frugal innovation is something which startup companies like JNP and all actually have to focus. Just good example is Zoom, for example. We have seen Zoom how well it actually works even at very low bandwidth levels compared to many of the very professional other platforms. So such solutions are something which an ecosystem has to provide. So that's why you have a holistic change which is happening at multiple levels. This has to get implemented.
Right, and there is one more question, Professor. So the mentor system is also required, because not everyone may learn better with the digital system. So they may need some handholding, they may need some mentoring. So one is, while you have complete online learning, second one is self-learning, and mentoring is also required. So which may not be again online, which may need face-to-face. So how is this, the mix planned?
If
It
I
has
may
to be a
take
mix of,
that, if I may take that for the first 30 seconds, mentoring has been a vital part of e-learning or self-learning right from the very beginning. So I think when we started talking about e-learning in the initial days in India about 20 years back in the year 2000, 2000, one thing which went along with self-learning and e-learning was mentoring. So again, that's been applicable to a lot of corporates at that time. Now coming to schools, we have to make sure that a model is evolved. And I think somewhere it should already be in place on how do we club mentoring with self-learning. And a lot of work to be still done there. And like Dr. Shaji said, companies like the digital startup companies have to start thinking on those lines, because we're talking about mentoring school kids and we're talking about kids right from the age group of 3 to 5. We're not talking about students in class 10th and 11th and on. So what should mentoring comprise of? Typically, mentoring would comprise of what we have been calling in colleges as, extra classes or doubt clearing sessions, but that has to be bundled along with the mainline learning. So if say a student in class 8 has been given a small module of 30 minutes to go through and understand what basics of a programming language is and some exercise, and then you have, after a week's time, you have a kind of a mentoring session set up for those kind of, for the entire class. Who wishes can join and say, this session is going to address the following aspects in terms of the 30-minute session or module that has been given to you for learning earlier in the week. So those models can vary and it can be evolved based on the class, the subject, and the need based on complexity.
okay, thank you. So now, can alumni help? Alumni are very proud of their schools and colleges, and they will also have the learning of what worked for them and what didn't, and what change would have made their life easier. So in the digital world, have their inputs been taken and then included?
We do it in the corporate all the time, and 100% it should help for the schools. Depends on what level of alumni you're talking about. So you have to talk about almost the immediate 5 years, of alumni. If you look at alumni which were there in schools 20 years ago, may not be so much. It would be, more of advisory help the way we are right now. But the immediate 5 years, or starting from anywhere between 2 to 5 years, is what can definitely play a huge role. So someone who's passed class 12th and let us say 2020, someone who passed class 12 in 2015 is someone who would definitely be able to give an input what worked, what didn't work well. So alumni input is absolutely going to be critical to make this succeed, in my opinion. And we do it, like I said, at the cost of being repetitive. Corporates do it a lot for our entry-level talents.
Right. And the next challenge is, bringing the culture of humanity, compassion, teamwork, and etc., which are very, very important in building the person holistically, the characters of a person. So in the digital world, how is this achieved? Teamwork. They need to come together. They need to see. They need to play together. They need to be compassionate. They need to be understanding. They need to share. How is this challenge addressed?
I think also something similar to what Vivek sir said in terms of, this is tools and systems and processes are being built in the corporate world, right? For efficiency and productivity, right? Team building, empathy, leadership, right? These so-called softer skills, and which, because we are all working remotely, how do we measure this? How do we make this happen, right? And not just have just video calls have, how do we do whiteboarding together, right? Which we used to take for granted in the physical world, right? All of these are equally necessary in the school environment, right? So as digital tools are getting built and are getting equipped with features that enable these to be done easily digitally, I think maybe it'll lead from the corporate world, because there the corporate world looks at ROI very clearly, and then it will filter into the education world, right? Of how students and teachers can also have sort of a similar experience as they used to have in the school environment, and maybe the playground environment. And can you replicate that digitally, right? But we are seeing that, the digital platforms are getting better and better. For example, there are a bunch of digital platforms in terms of digital events today, right? That have become very popular over the last 6 months to 9 months.
Yeah, Arjun, it is like learning the swimming digitally versus swimming itself. Playing football physically has a different impact than playing it, digitally, sitting at home, each one. I think this is a paradigm where because we are social beings end of the day. So
Absolutely.
what they learn when they come out and play together is different. I think, see, everything will have some gaps. So let's understand, let's appreciate the gaps. And if this is not solvable digitally, I mean, let's admit, and then we need to have a mechanism where they will come together. It need not be the friends of a same school. It can be community learning. It could be community, coming together, create an environment where the neighbors may go to different schools, but they can come out and play together. Uh, I think this needs to be touched upon. I think we have taken more time, so I would like to thank you very much, for all the wonderful discussion. I would like to summarize.
Just one point before
In
that,
the
yesterday
meanwhile,
to Arjun's,
does any other panelist want to add, any other point? We'll
just
have
one
2 more
point to
minutes.
what Arjun mentioned. I think the curriculum has to necessarily see an integration of softer skills. I remember we used to have a subject called moral science in school, which is
Yes.
nowhere to be seen in the curriculum, and that
Yes.
has to be the starting point for most of the children to inculcate a culture of collaboration, sharing, respect for each other, and that has to become very, very. It has to be a very focused drive by every school. We see it happening in colleges. For example, my son who does BBA now, he has a soft skill session. But what about students in class 2, 3? Are they being taught about as emphatically about communication, collaboration, sharing? So I think that's just one thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So does anyone else in the panel want to add any other points? Okay, so I would like to just summarize what has been discussed here. So inquisitive quotient has been missing. I hope the new system brings it, and that will make the learning complete, which makes it the holistic learning, while the students are assessed based on their abilities to learn what they are good at, what their interests are, and what their abilities are. And it need not be just one thing. Someone may be good in both science as well as arts, as well as music or games. So it should be possible to learn each of them as subject with the same interest, not as an extracurricular activity. And there is the learning multiple streams. And learning should also be assessment based, which is continuous, not just the semester end or the year end term and assessment memory test. And digital education is going to help significantly in bringing uniformity of learning across the schools for the same syllabus and the subject. However, mentoring is also very much required, and it has to be a blend of digital learning, online learning, and face-to-face mentoring. So, and it is important that the adaptive learning has to be implemented in addition to the adaptive assessments. So that we need to capture the data, like what Arjun Rao mentioned, because we need to analyze that, and there will be learning patterns, not only for the individual, but also for the class. When you analyze the learning of a class, there will be a message. This class is good in maths. Maybe they need some mentoring in chemistry. Maybe they need some support in the moral science or whatever. So that is also very, very important. So those needs to be captured, which will help to fine tune the learning more specifically to make it very effective. And the regulatory framework has been removed, which is a very good thing. So there is no inhibition. Now it is all about the creativity of the learners, the students, the parents, and the teachers and the institutes, and of course the government providing all the necessary support. And India is a mix of big terrain and multiple cultures. So what works for a region may not work for another region for various reasons. So capturing the data and fine tuning to make it good for all, maybe a, a time consuming thing, but we will get there. The time will tell us what works and how to reinvent. The teachers, they should also be most respected in the society, again, like what it was earlier, so that there is a lot of pride comes into them and they will take the responsibility in making the next set of citizens. Next 2 to 3 years will be challenging because this is the learning curve. We learn and then we adapt and hope there will be NEP version 2 with all the learnings, and it will get better, but we need to start. We have started today. Funding is an essential ingredient for the whole thing, and everyone need to participate. So the parents, the schools and the government and the startups have to come up with new technology solutions, and everyone need to participate in making this a grand success. And uh, learning should be enjoyable. Use innovative solutions from companies, and we were comparing the company practices versus the academic practices. The company practices may not be fully adaptable in the education system because they have already graduated and they have matured. They have the maturity to deal with, and they have a reason to collaborate and do a few things because it is their living. So emotional aspects are to be considered in everything, in the well-being of the physical well-being, the mental well-being, and all of that. So yeah, the syllabus also has to be outcome-based rather than output-based. And this will also evolve. Who will participate in creating the syllabus is also an important aspect. So we may need to have people from the complete spectrum participate, not just the educationalists, but also the industrialists, and then the parents, and then the alumni, the past students. They all need to come together. So maybe there need to be a panel that will help create a holistic, syllabus, and then yeah, the follow the discipline, the digital discipline versus the school discipline is another parameter. So we will not know what works and what doesn't work. So this also needs the support of the tools and also the parents and the schools to make sure the meaningful disciplines are set up and followed. Um, yeah, so these are some of the key highlights, and very, very importantly, creating a responsible citizen is the responsibility of everyone. So that includes creating humanity, compassion, sharing, the moral sciences, all of them, uh, integrity, and all these characters need to be built in. Teamwork need to be built in. Teamwork cannot be built in by just the theory, just the audio and video lectures and talks and stories. So they need to come together. So that needs to be built into the system. So with this, I will ask Pinky to see how, she has an innovative solution. What part of these problems are addressed by her solution? Pinky, over to you.
Uh, it was a very informative discussion. Actually, it's a generic topic, so that actually it's having a one-day discussion, maybe we can say. But yeah, so here our product, what our product offers is that we are actually engaging the students with lots of activities. So it's a kind of psychological assessments are the academic as well as non-academic assessments through our platform. So it is a digital platform, and once the students are doing all these activities, our system, which is AI, artificial intelligent supported system, will analyze all these data points and we are giving the action plans based on how they have to improve their weakness, which all are their strong areas, and based on that. So here actually we are just created an auto feedback system. As Arjun Rao says, we need a auto feedback system. It's actually a connection between the parent, teacher, and students. So actually, once we have this healthy school community, then it is very easy to recreate the system, as well as we can ensure that growth of the students. But the part which is missing is that detached school community. So also the teachers, we already Sajid sir already mentioned in the discussion that the teachers, they are the backbone of the school. Once the school actually takes decision based on the interest of the teachers. If teacher is not willing to take a new digital platform, definitely the school are not adopting our system. So it all depends on the decision or the interest of the teachers. So definitely we want to create a solution which is complete.
I think Pinky dropped.
Sorry, there was a power failure. Now it's audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So addressing all these challenges from the teacher's point of view, from the parents point of view, as well as from the students point of view. So we have come out with a digital platform which is very user friendly for the teachers, and it is very pretty easy for the students, so that we are all giving students various activities which is very interesting for them. And once they are doing all these activities, our AI system, which is very powerful, and we have mapped all these data points, then we can actively give the reports, their strong areas, weak areas, and all these things. And based on all these reports, the school can come up with a solution, or come up with a conclusion that these are their strong and not at all strong, the weak skills, and that has to be improved. And definitely the mentoring section, that was actually not in our platform now, but we are actively looking for giving one-on-one mentoring to all those weak skilled students. So for this we need a big team of psychologists. So here we have only not that much big team. We have to onboard. Sorry, yeah. So definitely we have to onboard a big team of psychologists in order to give this one-on-one mentoring. So we can address the mental issues of each and every student if we are providing both the online and one-on-one interaction with the students. So it's a collective solution. So actually this is a big innovation, and it needs time to achieve or reach our vision. But we are few steps or more steps forward to dream this or to make it happen. And so this is a big revolution, and we are sure that we are now into schools, and we already prove ourselves that around 80% of skill set have been improved in our pilot running schools. So definitely we can deploy this to more schools, not only in Kerala but also in other states, because since it is AI backed system, it is very easy to map all this data irrespective of the region. At any demography we can deploy our product. So this is the actual status now, and we are in the next stages we will provide the one-on-one mentoring through our system.
Yeah, thank you, Pinky. I mean, so that it's interesting to know that you already have a tool that that solves many of these problems. So with this, I think we have come to the end of this panel discussion. So over to Pinky for the next steps. Thank you, panelists, for the wonderful discussion, for the wonderful insights that you have brought from your first-hand, hands-on experience.
Neha?
Thank you, sir. All right,
Thank you.
everyone. So as we come to a conclusion, I would like to thank all the panel members who have joined today with us, and all other members who joined us for the launch of SkEdu. Thank you. Stay home, stay blessed, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Pinky, Neha, and
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure
thank
meeting
you.
all of you.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. All the best.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
all
Bye.
for a great session, great panel discussion. So I'm very happy to be part of this panelist. So hope we can do so much of this kind of discussions again. So since this is a big topic, right? So lots of innovations. There is a scope that lots of innovations can be happen here. So actually, most of the edtech startups are actually stepping behind because of they are afraid, right? They are actually afraid to take up this big responsibility. So this is actually responsibility to the public, right? So that's why we got rejections from most of the people, from most of the mentors in the initial stages. But it is actually because of this great support of the team. We all team members are having the same vision to achieve this. So all this great support from all the panelists is actually giving us that much power and energy to move forward. So thank you all panelists for supporting us.
Pinky, don't worry at all. These are the initial hiccups of any startup. And hence, we have an organization like the GAIN to support the startups. They are a not-for-profit organization. So they know the challenges and they're there to help. And they bring a lot of people, in their network to support, the startups like yours, number one. Number two, you are mentioning that, you have a few customers already who have signed up, who are happy using your product. I mean, you already have a breakthrough. So I'm sure you will have a grand success going forward.
Okay. Thank you so much for the support of Kerala Startup Mission as well as the GAIN. Wish you all the success to give energy to yet another blessed startups on the way, right?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Thanks.
Thank you
Bye,
all.
everyone.
yeah, have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Mommy.
Pinky പോയോ?
Mommy പോയി. മാമനുണ്ട്.
Priyanka, please stop
Yeah.
streaming.
Okay. I can also stop recording, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.